He's back, Mike. Bobby Lazar is back.
A good old Bobby Lazar coming through again.
We're talking about this documentary that we got to sit down and watch, and we actually watched it together, guys. So for our patrons, we're going to upload audio, and we'll time it to where we all press play together. Honestly, it's not much because we're actually trying to watch and super pay attention. Yeah.
It's going to be a very dull listen, but if you want company while you're watching it alone,
there you go.
Maybe we could provide something, but it'll be on the Patreon page for those of you interested.
But why don't you tell us the name of this documentary and what its focus is, Mike?
Well, the focus is Bob Lazar. The film is called Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers. And it's basically about Bob Lazar's story. It just kind of because a lot of the stuff we see of Bob Lazar was all filmed in 1989. So you're just seeing all this stuff played over and over and over again. And the guy that did the film, Jeremy Corbell, wanted to give him an opportunity, I guess, to really get his full side of the story out rather than just being, the Area 51 guy. He wanted to actually give him the chance to get his story out. So we do see a lot of the replay from his 1989 interviews, but there's a lot of interviews that take place. I believe it was in 2016 when they filmed it. And the film just came out in December, and it's available on Amazon, and you can get it from iTunes and anywhere where you could get digital video. Really, it's available. And that's the gist of it.
Corbell does a really great job of refreshing the story and making it modern again. I can't believe he found Bob Lazar and he agreed to do this. But it just sheds light and gives Lazar a chance to retell the story and see if he sticks to his guns. And Corbell finds some interesting stuff, which we'll get into. And there's, of course, we're not a movie critique show, but some of that stuff was painful to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. There's, so the way that the film breaks down, you get a lot of the Bob Lazar story, and you get some interviews with George Knapp as well, who is the journalist that originally aired the interviews with Bob Lazar in Las Vegas. And he's also the guy who's behind a lot of the Skinwalker Ranch stuff. He was the co-writer for Hunt for the Skinwalker, and I think he's been on Ancient Aliens as well. And I don't know if he is anymore, but he was the weekend host for Coast to Coast AM. So he's a pretty well-known guy in our pool of interests, I guess we'll say. But there's interviews with him, and then there's aside from the Bob Lazar stuff, there's this kind of like weird transitional pieces where it's like Mickey Rourke reciting poetry and like philosophical musings and with some artsy background stuff, and
little too Showtime HBO-y for me.
I mean it was, I guess it would be cool if you're into that sort of thing, but if you're just want to see the Bob Lazar story, it's a little off-putting. But
and again,
I understand it's a film and it's done for entertainment value, and if it was just a face-to-face interview one-on-one, it would get a little boring. Even if the content was interesting, it would be visually boring. So it's he kind of added an artistic element to it, but it wasn't exactly our cup of tea. But the information was still great, and the way that the information itself was presented was pretty spot on, I thought.
Most definitely. Like I said, we're not a movie critiquing podcast, and I think overall Corbell did a good job. There's just some stuff. I mean, before we even, that's all the negative stuff I really was going to say about it. But yeah. I mean, just start off, I couldn't do any better. We couldn't do any better if we made a movie. So it was overall, I liked it. It was great. We're totally recommending it, and we're going to talk about it. And just so everybody knows, maybe you haven't heard of Bobby Lazar, as we call him, Bob Lazar. He's just a whistleblower. He said he worked at a military base at Area 51, and they hired him to reverse engineer the propulsion system to an alien craft. And he's always said, talked about everything that goes along with that. And interesting stuff happens when he starts talking about it again.
Yeah, pretty much, if you've heard of Area 51, it's because of Bob Lazar. And what he did initially was he came out and appeared on a Las Vegas news show, but he first presented the information with a hidden identity. Like, he was silhouetted, and he went by the name Dennis, which I guess was the name of his boss when he worked at Los Alamos. But he talked about how, and that's the other thing with him. He is no nonsense. He doesn't give any bullshit preamble. He's just like, well, I'm Bob Lazar, and I was hired to work at the secret government facility S4, which is just a few miles past Groom Lake, and I worked on reverse engineering alien spacecraft. And it's just so matter of fact the way that he presents it, and he's clearly not in it for fame and fortune and glory. And there's one interview where a guy even tries to give him credit for being heroic and trying to, risking his life or whatever. And he has said many times that the only reason he opened up about it was as a means of insurance. Yeah, he started to get afraid. He was getting people tailing him. Let's start with I don't think that this part was in the documentary, but what happened with Bob Lazar, to begin with, he was working at S4 because he was doing all this top secret stuff. He said the pressure was intense, and it was like every day. He said it was just unbelievably stressful, but he kept going back to it because he got to work on this technology. And he would, because of the nature of what he was doing, he had to be very secretive with his wife, which led his wife to believe that he was having an affair. So then she ended up having an affair. And because he was involved with all this top secret stuff, they being, I think he said he worked for the Navy. So either the Navy or the government, they were bugging his phones and recording conversations and everything. And through this, they found out that his wife was having an affair. So they came to him while he was working and called him in and basically said, we're going to relieve you of your duties until you can get your affairs in order. Your wife is cheating on you. Go fix your life, and then we'll talk. So apparently he left, and this kind of spooked him, and he started being followed, and he realized that his phones were being monitored, and he just started getting freaked out. And because he was getting freaked out and he knew all this information, he was being tailed, he thought that his life was in danger. So he made the decision to put the information out there in the public view, thinking that if he put his name in front of this, if anything were to happen to him, it would prove everything that he was saying was right. So he just basically spilled the beans on this whole thing in an attempt to save his own life. And there was an interview that happened in '89 where the I don't remember who it was that was interviewing him, but he was on a talk show, and the guy was trying to give him credit, being like, you're a hero for risking your life. And he's basically like, well, thank you for saying that, but that's not at all the reason I did this. I did this solely for self-preservation. And it's something that he's said many times. He's not doing this to make money. He has said, in fact, in the documentary, he says that he regrets doing it because it's been a detriment to his life. he's not taken seriously by a lot of people, and he's now under scrutiny, and there's always the ever-looming threat of the government and the military as well.
Yeah, I mean, they start the documentary off with the director getting a text from Lazar saying that he's being raided by the FBI.
Mm-hmm. And that was a weird, I don't want to spoil exactly what went on there, but he was raided by the FBI after a conversation that he had with Jeremy Corbell. And they go over that all in the documentary, but as a direct result, well, I shouldn't say as a direct result, it could be coincidence, but it's a pretty significant coincidence, I would say, that the day following this conversation, he gets raided by the FBI. And they quoted conversations that the two of them had, which is even creepier.
Yeah. Again, we don't want to give it away. It's very exciting. It's very interesting stuff. It's very suspicious, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, after all these years, Bob Lazar has relatively kept quiet. And the second he talked, man, they were on him.
And I mean, he always came across as being completely genuine. I never listened to him talk and thought that he came off sounding like a crazy man or someone who's unreasonable or prone to flights of fancy. And this film just, to me, in my mind, really cemented that what he's saying is the truth as far as he knows it.
I totally agree. It was very refreshing to see Bob Lazar. It was very refreshing to see his old interviews compared to how he told the story today. He's never made any money at it. He doesn't have a lot of money. You get to see him pack fireworks because that's what he does. It was super awesome. I mean, to his story and just how it was presented, it just breathed new life into Bob Lazar's whole story for me. Yeah. It was really awesome to watch.
And the story that he always told, so a lot of people, you know, they know about the S4 and the different crafts that he saw there and the one that he worked on, but he has given a lot of information. And as the years go by and our technology starts to improve, we start seeing these things that he's saying come true. Like, for instance, in 1989, he referenced element 115, which at that point had been undiscovered. And he was saying that a stabilized version of this element is part of what's used in the systems for these crafts. And he said that they use gravity, and gravity works as a wave. At that point in time, gravity was just considered a force. We didn't think of it as being a wave. But recently, within the past couple of years, it was proven that gravity is, in fact, a wave.
And there's a few things like that in the documentary where what he said in 89 has turned out to be true. And I loved his analogy about how he explained how the ships manipulate gravity as a wave. The whole time I was like, what? And then
it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, he gave the example of putting a bowling ball on your bed and then pushing your hand down in front of the bowling ball. And of course, the bowling ball would roll forward. He says that's what these crafts do.
They just bend space and time and basically bring themselves closer to the object they're approaching. So if you're able to fold space and time enough, you could travel almost anywhere instantaneously.
Mm-hmm.
You always hear about it looks like a craft will like jump across the sky. It'll be on one side and then somehow is miles away in the blink of an eye. And I think that the idea of a spacecraft coming from another star system, we'll say, I think that is just so preposterous to most scientific minds because we are only aware of our own technology. So to us, it's all fuel-based propulsion systems. And as far as we know, through the fastest thing that we can do, it would take, we wouldn't be able to make the trip in our lifetime. So in the minds of people that think like that, there's no way they could survive these distances. And then even if they could, would it be worth it? Because who knows what what you'd find once you came through. But if they're able to move through space and time by bending it and warping it so that they cut the distance. I mean, think about the vast distance just between stars. And if you could just fold that in half and bring your position closer to the distant star, and then you do that again, and then you do it again, and it's like a flat stone skipping over water.
Yeah, Event Horizon shit.
Except without the hell.
They found a way to avoid the hell dimension.
Yeah, we've plotted a course so that we avoid hell. Oh, thank God! Last time was shit. We lost half our crew.
So more about this element. What is it? 151?
115.
115.
Yeah.
So this is supposedly what these craft use and able to utilize this gravitational manipulation.
Yeah, I guess it helps. I don't know if it's like the energy source or if that's what allows them to manipulate reality or space and time. I'm not sure, but I know it's a key component.
So you had mentioned that this element 115 wasn't discovered when he was talking about it, but it is now.
It was like theoretical, I guess, at that point in time. But it's since been proven.
Oh, wow.
But it's so volatile that they haven't been able to, like, it basically disintegrates within seconds. So they have to find a stabilized version of it, which he said was stockpiled at S4, and they'd be able to use it for their own vehicles of that sort if they were able to reverse engineer it. But he said he used to take people out. He would tell them exactly where to go and at what time and what day of the week. And he'd be like, you go there, you're going to see a flying saucer. People would go there, and there it was. He took John Lear there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And John, there's I don't know where it was released. I saw it fairly recently, though, but it's like a VHS tape that John Lear is filming of one of these craft that are flying over this area. And he mentions who's present while they're watching this, and he mentions Bob Lazar by name. And then they watch this craft fly up into the air and hover there, and then do these impossible maneuvers. And Bob Lazar told him where to go and when to do it. And at any given time when he said that, you could go and the stuff would be there. But with Bob Lazar coming out and telling everybody about Area 51 and S4, obviously interest peaked and people started wanting to see it. So the government had to continue expanding it outward. And there used to be a mountain range that you could look down on the base from, but the government has since bought the mountain. So you can't even look down from the ridge anymore. Yeah. But what kills me is they took all those measures, and only fairly recently did they admit that Area 51 was even a real place.
Mm-hmm.
Like for the longest time, that doesn't exist, or we can't confirm or deny it, that type of bullshit. When there's signs saying government facility did not approach, you could be shot, all that stuff.
Yeah, and they're not shy about that. There's plenty of footage of people going up there and getting shooed off by military personnel.
Yeah, like as soon as you approach, before you even get to their line, the fence or the borderline, these white SUVs pull up and they just start monitoring you. And on the road up to the base, there's all these monitoring devices so that they can see and hear everything that's approaching.
Yeah, I went to a UFO conference a few years ago, and they were talking about Area 51, and I asked them if they thought that was overkill as far as what they say is at Area 51, because they went through everything that was there. And they have these listening devices, and it's all this weird shit. It's not just normal surveillance stuff. And they pretend not to understand my question 3 times until I just gave them back the microphone.
Yeah, that's weird. But to me, I wonder if other bases have the same type of guards, because according to Bob Lazar, Area 51, that's just a test site. There's no alien craft there. and all the alien craft is at S4, which is miles away.
Mm-hmm.
So I like, is there more there and he just wasn't aware of it? Or is that just standard operating procedure for test sites?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we now know that the stealth program started there. The SR-71 spy plane, which is still one of the greatest spy planes ever created, that was developed there in the 60s. And I mean, you look at that, the SR-71 now, and it still looks futuristic. You know, it still kind of looks like a UFO or something weird.
It sure does. And we've mentioned that many times. Every time I look at that airplane, I
mean,
just...
it's the X-Men's mode of operations. Or, you know, they use the SR-71 to go everywhere.
Mm-hmm. That's not much of an exaggeration.
Yeah.
What do they call it? The X-Wing? Probably.
No, I think they call it the Blackbird.
That's right.
Which is what the SR-71 is nicknamed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, you know, Professor X stole a top secret spy plane. Good for you.
Trying to get the word out about the man.
And then he just had Forge give it some upgrades and away we go.
So watching this documentary and seeing Bob stay true to everything that he's talked about, I really had to ask, why come out about this in the first place? You know, he was talking about self-preservation, but why would he come out in the first interview other than wanting to seek attention?
I don't think so. I think it was just he got freaked out. He was being monitored and followed, and I just think it got too, like, think about what anxiety does to you, you know, as someone who has anxiety attacks, and think about how quickly you go into fight or flight mode.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when you're put under stress like that, you're not going to sleep well. You're not going to be thinking things through. You're thinking of self-preservation when it comes down to it, or protecting your family. So in his case, he really felt the only way to protect himself is to become the public face of this thing.
So that's always been his explanation. That's always been his reason.
Yep.
Wow, that he must have been going through some pretty heavy shit.
Well, like I said, he was being for one, he was being told that alien life is real and it has visited Earth. He was given access to these top secret craft, and he was then relieved of his duties. So he knows all this shit, but he's no longer under their thumb. So he's being followed, he's being monitored. And when you know things that are that deep, dark, black, you could be killed at any point in time and no one would know. You could be suicided and people just be like, oh, his wife was cheating on him and he killed himself.
Mm-hmm.
Plausible, done. And but if you put yourself out there and you put your face out in the open and say, hey, I know all this stuff that's going on. My name's Bob Lazar. Look at me. You are now the public face of that. So if anything happens to you, instantly you're going to have at least a chunk of the public saying, oh shit, they just offed this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also why he said right from the get-go that he was doing this to protect himself. He was scared and he didn't want to die. And I think adding that to his testimony as well, then you really have that seed planted in the public eye, where if something does happen, instantly they refer back to him saying, I don't want to die. I'm putting this out there to protect myself. You know, because once the information's out there, what's the point in killing him? He's already said everything. So if you kill him now it's just vindication.
Obvious.
Everyone will know.
Vindication.
Yeah.
And that's the lesson that Roy Schneider taught us, is that they'll fucking kill you.
Yeah.
It didn't go like without a purpose.
I think the thing with Roy Schneider is that his story was way more out there than Bob Lazar's, because Bob Lazar's story, it's
classic shit, right? It's classic stuff. I worked on the UFO.
Yeah, and he doesn't have any claims of working with aliens or knowing about the ties between the government and the aliens. He wasn't even told how they got the craft. He just knew they had the craft. He was told that they had bodies. He wasn't shown the bodies. So all of the information he had is based on what was told to him. So you know that things were filtered, and he even says in the documentary, if he wanted to come up with a story, he could come up with a much better story than what he's putting out there. He just put out what he knows, and that was it. He saw the craft, he worked on the craft, he knows how they work, and that's why he doesn't give any of this bullshit like where they're from, what their agenda is. He gives us the technical specs of what's going on with the craft. And that's the story that he gives.
And that's why I love the guy and I love his story and why I believe him even more now. I mean, he really, really stuck to his guns. There's no hippity dippity shit. There's no message. It's just why and not much of why.
And I mean, think about it. If he really wanted to make money, if he wrote a book, how many people would buy that book?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
after all this time,
everybody that's into this stuff would be all over it if he wrote a book. He's not looking to do that. He's not putting his name out. He's not on Ancient Aliens. Like, do you know how much Ancient Aliens would jerk off to get him on their show? But he's not showing up on Ancient Aliens. He's not palling around with Giorgio.
No, I mean, he's literally trying to cut out an honest wage for himself every day.
Yeah. And a lot of the people that try to disprove him refer to his credentials. For those unfamiliar with the story, he went to MIT and Caltech, and he worked at Los Alamos. If any researchers look into him now, there's no record of him at Caltech, there's no record of him at MIT, and there's no record that he ever worked at Los Alamos. However, he does have a pay stub from Los Alamos, so it proves that he worked there, and a statement that he makes is, unless they hired me right from high school, there was something that happened between high school and when I worked at Los Alamos. And they're not going to be hiring someone straight out of high school. And there's lots of people that have vouched for him going to school at both MIT and Caltech, people that have went to school with him, people that have actually dropped him off at school, saying things like, I dropped him off. I never went to class with him, but I can tell you I dropped him off at campus every single day, which that's pretty planning pretty far ahead for some hoax story that you're going to make up and then not make any money off of
20 years from now.
Yeah.
And that's, again, I loved his honesty. I mean, there's one part where he drew the craft that he worked on. And he continuously says, I worked on the propulsion system. And he explains where things are. And again, he says, I don't know shit about this part of the craft. I was not assigned to that. They did not let me know about that. I didn't get to see anything about that. And there's so much like that just rings so true. And it's what you would expect in a situation like this. I would expect them to tail him for the rest of their life. I even more expected them for them to take him out in the back and shoot him in the ear.
Right.
Before
especially when they relieved him of duty, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But for a while, I kind of, like I've said a couple of times now, I believe that what he's saying is his approximation of the truth. I don't think he's making up stories. What worries me is things like the Paul Benowitz case and the whole state of disinformation. He talks a lot about seeing these things working, and he sees a lot of weird stuff going on, and he said that he was watching the craft. They were demonstrating it, and when it flew up into the sky, he said when he went directly under it, he could see the stars above it. But if he was off to the side, he could see it. So it's like right at the underside of this craft is able to take on the appearance of the stars in the sky, so that it's basically transparent. So I don't know if it's done like that. If it's like a screen on the bottom of it, so they're able to. I don't know. But then you got the story of Paul Benowitz, where he was shown like crashed vehicles that were allegedly shot down by the military, but it was all basically a stage setup that they just did in the mountains. So while one gives the appearance of being something exotic, the other one is actually a display of something exotic. And like I said, he comes off as being true. And I don't think that he's making this stuff up. So I don't think that the story of him witnessing the stuff taking off and explaining the things that it's capable of is just the working of an imaginative mind. Like I said earlier, he was able to tell people when to go to a specific area to see UFOs in action. And people went, and there they were.
And that's actually well documented. A lot of his story is well documented. I mean, what did you think about the hand scanner part? We got to talk about that.
Oh, I forgot all about that. Yeah, that hand scanner.
And hats off to the director for digging that out. That was amazing.
Yeah, that was awesome. Bob Lazar from early on was talking about, because he went into details. He wanted to go into details of all of the protocol too. So he talked about flying in on that airliner that just has the red line on the side. He talked about getting on a bus with blacked out windows and being taken to S4. And he was talking about this hand scanner, which he said it measures using some form of light. It's able to measure the bones in your fingers to identify who you are as an individual. And he would always reference it as looking like needles coming down, or pins. I think, pins, I think is what he referred to them as. But Jeremy Corbell shows him this picture, and he's like, this is exactly what I was talking about. But apparently it was used for the same purpose at a different military base. It might have been Wright-Patterson.
Yeah, they had declassified whatever patent this machine was. And when he told this story about this scanner back in 89, people laughed at him. It wasn't in use anywhere.
Because it sounds like future technology, but apparently it was in use at the time. And how would he have known about that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they show his old drawing of it from 89. And then the picture of what this actual scanner looks like. And it is the same thing. No question, no doubt. It's a drawing of the fucking picture. And it's just, there's so much like that in his story. It's amazing.
Yeah, just so much stuff that's come out that has, and nobody gives credit for it. He's still just, he's the Area 51 guy. But what about all that? And then it's not in the documentary, but I heard an interview with Jeremy Corbell where he's talking to Bob Lazar. And he brings up the gravity wave thing. And he's like, you got to feel vindicated that this is finally proven to be true. And that's something that you said back in 89, and everyone said, no, it's not possible. But now we know gravity is a force. And his response was, well, if you really think about it, I had a 50-50 chance. Either it is a force or it isn't. And, and that's just that's how he just kind of takes all of this stuff. Like whenever he's proven right, he's just like, well, yeah, that's what I said. But if you think about it, if it was never proven to be right, then it's just something somebody said. Like he's very, very laid back. Like he's just kind of like, I told you, I'm not lying. So, and that's what I really like about him. He doesn't care if you believe or not. It doesn't matter to him. He did what he had to do, and the information's out there. If you want to believe it, cool. If not, that's fine. Doesn't change his life any.
Yeah, he's gone on with his life. I did like how they did take a second to focus on all the trash his history and his past receives about where he went to school and stuff like that. And how they did point out that it's just an obvious tactic of trying to discredit somebody. And to me, that's one thing of a story. Another thing of a story that rings true. We're seeing it now. We're seeing people get in trouble for tweets that are 9 years old. It's a tactic it's a real tactic. It's being used now, and it very well could have been used on him. I mean, what are you going to do if you're a dude who runs a goddamn college and 4 guys in camo fatigues come in with a guy, just medals to the gills, and they're like, you don't tell anybody this cunt went to this school.
Yeah, you delete all files, you shred all evidence.
I would be like, yes, sir, you got it.
I wonder if Bob Lazar got his student loans forgiven as a result. Because if you don't go to school, you don't have to pay your loans back, right?
Yeah.
Like, prove that where am I paying these student loans from then? Oh, you mean, what student loans? I don't have student loans anymore. Yeah. So maybe that it was all just a ploy to get out of paying off his student loan debts.
So, again, I don't want to go into too much detail about this raid because, like we said, the documentary starts with him sharing texts with Bob about being raided right now. He's being raided that moment. And they wait till almost the end for Bob to explain what happens. And I don't want to give too much of that away, but what did you think about that raid?
I thought it was weird. If it was a coincidence, it would be a very strange coincidence. I don't think it was, though, because they do reference, according to Bob, when he was talking to Jeremy, they did reference that he was, or they referenced verbatim words from a conversation they had the previous day.
Yes, but as far as what showed up and what they said they wanted, that didn't blow your mind a little bit?
That's some shit. That was definitely a massive show of force. Like, basically, they're just swinging their dick out. Like, take a look at, this is the long dick of America, baby. What you got? And yeah. Bob's like, my dick's not as big as America. I'm sorry. It's just a completely lopsided response to what they were allegedly looking for.
I would definitely love to hear back from you guys about what you think about that when you watch the documentary. We've gotten a lot of cool responses from people. We talked about the unnatural disasters, and we actually heard back from a firefighter saying that there are houses that are made with materials that are fireproof, and some houses can stand untouched. So, yeah, if you guys know anything about military operations and shit, let us know what you think about that type of raid. He didn't get swatted.
Yeah.
It's way scarier than that.
It's not some local SWAT team. It's a bunch of 3-letter agencies.
So why now? Why are we seeing such a credible story come out now? Is this part of the great disinformation phase that's supposedly happening? Which I don't fucking buy. I don't think that's happening at all.
I mean, I think that the disclosure is, I think it's happening, but I think it's happening in a different way and for different reasons. I don't think it's like, hey, let's just finally let people know what's going on. I think it's just kind of a way to condition us into just kind of taking it out of the taboo subject and, opening up the idea that this could be a very real thing. And whether it is real or not, it just seems like this is the direction they're taking things. And whether it's for nefarious purposes, which it most likely is, but maybe it's not. I don't want to be paranoid about it. I would like if it was just a thing that was cool. And they're just like, hey, we were watching UFOs. And that's the I think that's the hardest thing with disclosure is the government or the military has to come out and admit that they've been lying to the public. And that's the hardest part because we're supposed to have faith in our military and faith in our government. And even now with the stuff they came out with over the past couple of years with that Air Force footage and releasing that they did have a secret program that was monitoring these things all these years after Blue Book, when they said Blue Book was the end and there was no merit in studying these things further. And they were continuing to study, and they said it closed down, but did it? Maybe that one did, but I'm sure there's other things going on now.
Don't you think it's the perfect time for the government to say, yeah, we were lying?
No.
I mean, with just the way really, you don't think Trump's the perfect guy to be like, we had to lie?
No, I don't. He's too polarizing. They would need somebody that wasn't so polarizing. like they couldn't have Obama do it. Too many people hated Obama. They definitely can't have Trump do it. They can't have Bush do it.
No, he can't spell UFO.
But I don't, because of the nature of government. And I mean, do I think that they should? Yeah, I think they should, but that's just me. To me, I already don't trust my government. So for them to come out and admit to lying all this time, at least that's a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people that do have trust in their government, and the good boys and girls that go to church and vote and pay their taxes, don't break any laws, and live for God and country, those people would be in an uproar if their government came out and said, we've been lying to you for the past almost 100 years now. And it's a little ridiculous. I think in terms of if the government finally was just like, fuck it, we're done with it, they should put out small discoveries and make it seem like this is a thing that we are just now discovering to be truth. If it's a situation where the government knows about these things and they have no control over them, and they're worried that it's going to be a big, giant public unveiling at some point that the aliens or whatever they are just going to do without their consent, then they're going to, it would be smarter for them to just say, all right, we're just finding out about this stuff, but this is what we know so far. And then you could always use national security, say we've known about this, but because of national security, we couldn't put it out until now, but now we need to let the public know. And
yeah, exactly. And I think that's the only thing that's going to move them to completely disclose everything. It's going to be a situation to where that subject is out of control for them. Yeah. There's something that's happened to where
it's just like Bob Lazar. His situation became out of control. He was powerless, so he got in front of it so that he wouldn't get in trouble or be killed off. And the government, if they're losing control of it, and the best thing for them to do is get in front of it so that they're not the assholes when shit hits the fan.
I still think that not Americans, the whole human race, I think they're not ready for that load. I think just even myself, hoping that this information comes out, ready for this information to come out. I've thought about processing that information and applying what changes that may cause to my mind, my life, my way of thinking. And I think just to know that there's fucking aliens flying around, they're out of our control, but they're there, I think that would eventually weigh on me. I think we'd see a lot of mental breakdown.
I don't think that, because so if they came out and said that aliens, we now know that the aliens are real, that they exist in the universe. Up to this point, they have not been aggressive. I mean, if they shot a plane down here and there, or sunk a ship here and there, that's one thing. But they haven't done any full-scale invasions. Clearly, if they wanted to, they could, and they haven't. So,
let me ask you this then. I mean, we all know that the scariest situation would be like Independence Day, where a bunch of huge ships just roll into cities. But doesn't it make you a little bit more nervous to think that they are there, the government admits that they are there, and they haven't done something like that, that there is this huge looming factor, that there's these creatures that have planet-ending fucking technology?
No, because we don't have any proof of planet-ending technology. We just have proof of their really kick-ass mode of transportation.
Well, I mean, if they're folding time and space, I'm sure they have some pretty badass laser guns, too.
But who's to say? I mean, I haven't heard of anybody being vaporized. And according to Ancient Aliens, they've been here for fucking thousands of years, so...
We're going to have to revisit that Brazil case of mutilation. Again, maybe there's bad aliens and good aliens. Who knows?
And maybe those weren't even aliens. Maybe they were vampires.
Oh, there's some pretty nasty vampires then, because... Ooh.
Well, see, and that's another thing. I think that a lot of this stuff gets lumped together. And I think we're dealing with a lot of different phenomenon here. I think the abduction cases are different. I think the cattle mutilation is different. I don't think that everything can be universally applied to being the exact same thing. I think that it's possible that what's causing them, like what I mean by that is what's causing us to see these things that shouldn't be on Earth, whether it be aliens or ghosts or fairies. I think whatever creates that phenomenon is all related. But I think these phenomenon that occur, like look at it in terms of hauntings. You've got your poltergeist hauntings. You've got your intelligent hauntings. You've got like the recording hauntings. And those are all considered to be ghosts. But why do they act so differently?
Mm-hmm.
It's clearly not the same thing that's happening.
We so easily accept that it's just a different category of ghost.
Yeah. So I think that when we're looking at it in terms of aliens, I think that aliens is just the general term that's applied. I don't think that that's going to cover all the bases. I think sometimes I think our world is a lot weirder than we like to think. So we try to come up with these boogeymen and labels behind the weird shit that happens. And all we're doing is looking at things through the filter of our own humanity. And it's impossible for us to know what exists outside of things that we're even aware of. If we're not even aware that such things can occur, then how can we try to put a label on what's happening through that? If they're interdimensional beings, if what's causing this is some sort of dimensional breach and we're getting things from another reality that are able to pop through, how can we explain that when we didn't even know that we could breach other realities or other dimensions and cross through the border and exist there and have them exist here? It's just a whole new world, man. It's like trying to describe Disney World to a blind person.
Yeah, and that shit's scary to me, man. I think that you're going to get a massive increase of freaked out phone calls from Mateo if the government says there's alien. I'll call you constantly. Is anything on fire there?
Have you been vaporized yet? No, but I have been body snatched and I am now an alien. Yeah.
See, I wouldn't be able to know then. You guys got to give us live updates if aliens land. I think we've said that before, and that's true. You guys got to, shoot us a tweet.
Or if you're a pod person, let us know that as well. We need to identify the pod people. That's very important.
You can come on, state your case for what's happening. You don't have to reveal your real alien name or your assumed human name.
I would like to know what happens to the people that you replace, though. Like, do you eat them? Do they get shipped off to your home world? Do they just get vaporized? Are they still living? Maybe they're just in a closet tied up. I don't know. I would like to know. If you could tell me, that'd be awesome.
Or if Bob Lazar, if you're listening and you know.
Yeah. And the unlikely chance that you know is Phil Schneider telling the truth.
They use them for their reptilian milkshakes, the ones they stopped giving Bush Sr. So
he died.
Yeah.
Like, all right, you're cut off. Death for you.
No more people shakes, you old MF.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.